Get on the ground right now. Keep your hands where I can see them. Don't you move an inch, or I swear I'll break your damn arm." Officer Daniel Harper's roar shattered the humid August night outside the Quick Trip gas station in Decatur, Georgia. His voice cutting through the low hum of engines like a blade, loud, sharp, and dripping with authority. "Do exactly what I tell you, or you'll regret it." Judge Nathaniel Carter never imagined he'd hear words like that directed at him. Not here. Not in Atlanta. Not after everything he had built over the past 20 years. At 47 years old, he had earned respect as one of DeKalb County's most principled Superior Court judges, known for protecting constitutional rights and fighting for fairness. And yet here he was, standing next to his black Lexus under harsh fluorescent lights, exhausted from an endless day at Emory University Hospital, where his wife Alicia was recovering from surgery, suddenly treated like a dangerous criminal. He had stopped at the Quick Trip for nothing more than a bottle of water before heading home to Buckhead. But within seconds, the night had spiraled beyond control. Harper and his younger partner, Officer Michael Vaughn, had stormed across the parking lot like predators, their boots pounding against pavement, hands hovering over holsters, eyes locked on him as if he had already been convicted. "Step away from the car! Hands up now!" Harper barked. Nathaniel slowly raised his hands, trying to project calm even as his pulse raced. "Officers, there must be some mistake," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm Judge Nathaniel Carter, DeKalb County Superior Court. My ID is right here in my wallet." Harper scoffed loudly, not even glancing at the wallet. "Yeah, sure you are," he sneered, his lips curling into a smirk. "We've got an armed robbery suspect on the loose. Black male, medium build, dark jacket, black seats. Dan, and look at you. You fit it perfectly." Nathaniel froze, blinking, confused at the absurdity. He wasn't even wearing a jacket. He was still dressed in his gray suit from court, his tie loosened, his judge's ID badge clipped inside his pocket. But before he could respond, Harper lunged forward, shoving him hard against the hood of his car, the metal cold and unforgiving against his chest as Vaughn stepped in, grabbing Nathaniel's left arm and yanking it behind his back with brutal force. Pain shot through his shoulder instantly. "Sir, please," he said calmly, even as his jaw tightened. "My judicial ID is right there. Check my wallet. It'll explain everything." Vaughn hesitated, his grip loosening slightly as doubt flickered across his face. But Harper snapped, "Don't listen to him! Cuff him now!" The sharp click of steel locking around Nathaniel's wrists rang louder than anything else. By now, a small crowd had gathered near the gas pumps, phones out, recording everything. Among them stood Priya Sharma, the Quick Trip manager, frozen in shock as she whispered into her headset, "That's Judge Carter. Oh my God, that's Judge Carter." Harper pressed harder against Nathaniel's back, leaning close enough that Nathaniel could feel his breath when he spat his next words quietly, like a promise meant to wound. "People like you think you're above the law. Not tonight." Nathaniel's chest burned from humiliation, from anger, from disbelief. But he forced himself to breathe, to stay silent, to remember every detail. He thought of Alicia lying pale in her hospital bed, of Jasmine and Malik, his teenage children, who looked up to him as their example of dignity and strength. He thought about the courtroom where he had fought for justice for people just like himself. Cameras flashing in his face, strangers whispering, "Is that really him?" Priya angled her phone, capturing the full scene. Harper's aggressive stance, Vaughn's conflicted expression, Nathaniel's calm dignity, despite the steel biting into his wrists. Within minutes, that recording hit social media like wildfire. Nathaniel raised his head slightly, his voice calm but firm. "I told you already, I am Judge Nathaniel Carter. My judicial ID is in my wallet. Check it now, and this will end immediately." The desk sergeant barely glanced up. "We'll sort it out later," he muttered, reaching for an intake form. Harper handed over his belongings, including Nathaniel's wallet, but made no move to open it. The process dragged. Photographs, fingerprints, intake forms, designed to strip him down, reduce him to a number. Officer Jamal Robinson approached. A young black officer, his expression tense but respectful. "Judge Carter," he whispered softly, careful not to draw Harper's attention. Nathaniel recognized him from a lecture he'd given to new recruits about constitutional rights. "Sir, I saw the video," Robinson whispered. Harper barked his name sharply, forcing Robinson to step back, but Nathaniel caught the flicker of sympathy in his eyes. Finally, Robinson returned, walking briskly toward the booking desk. "Sergeant," he said firmly, holding up a phone. "I just spoke to Judge Morales. She confirmed this is Judge Nathaniel Carter. We need to stop processing immediately." A hush fell over the room. The sergeant looked up, frowning as he glanced from Robinson to Nathaniel to Harper. "That true?" Harper stiffened. "Suspect matched the description, sir. We followed procedure." Nathaniel turned to face them, still cuffed, his voice calm but carrying authority forged from decades on the bench. "You ignored my ID. You ignored my position. And now the entire city has watched you shove a sitting judge into the back of a cruiser like a criminal. Check your phones if you think I'm exaggerating." The sergeant pulled up his screen. The video was there front and center. Tens of thousands of views, comments flooding in, headlines screaming about racial profiling and police misconduct. Silence settled over the room before the sergeant finally cleared his throat. "Uncuff him." Harper hesitated, but Vaughn stepped forward first, unlocking the cuffs without a word, his hands trembling slightly. Nathaniel rubbed his wrists slowly, the marks red and raw, then turned to Harper, his voice low and deliberate. "This isn't over." Going home, Nathaniel drove home in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than he realized. By now, he knew the video had gone viral. He could feel it in the stares from passing drivers, the buzz of notifications on his phone. Inside his Buckhead home, Jasmine and Malik, his teenage children, were waiting in the living room, their faces pale with worry. Jasmine, 16 and fiery like her mother, stood as soon as he walked through the door. "Dad, I saw the video," she said, holding up her phone, her brown eyes wide with anger and fear. "They shoved you like you were nothing. How could they do that to you?" Malik, 14, quieter but no less shaken, sat on the couch, his fists clenched. "I wanted to go down there, Dad. I wanted to tell them who you are." Nathaniel dropped his keys, walking toward them and pulling both close. "I'm okay," he said finally. "I'm here. I'm home." But Jasmine pulled back, frustration flashing across her face. "Being okay isn't enough, Dad. This video is everywhere. Everyone is talking about it." Nathaniel nodded slowly, meeting her gaze. "It happened because I'm a black man in America," he said quietly. "My title didn't matter to them. My years of service didn't matter. All they saw was what they wanted to see." "It's not fair," Malik whispered. "No, it isn't," Nathaniel said. "But fairness isn't guaranteed, Malik. That's why we fight for it." His phone buzzed, Alicia calling from her hospital room. "I'm home," he said softly. "I'm okay." But Alicia had already seen the video. "I watched what they did to you," she said, her tone clipped. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is bigger. You can't stay silent." "I know. I'm thinking about our options." "Don't just think, act. File a civil rights suit, go public, demand accountability. If this can happen to you, it can happen to anyone." "I'm not rushing this. This isn't about vengeance. It's about change." "Then make it count, Nathaniel. Use your position, your voice. Turn this into something bigger than us." Later that night, Nathaniel sat at his dining table, laptop open, reviewing judicial ethics guidelines. Tomorrow, he would preside over a misconduct hearing involving Harper and Vaughn, accused in another case of excessive force against a young man named Malik Thompson. Until tonight, it had been just another case. But now, everything had changed. The hearing begins. The next morning, the Dalb County Courthouse was buzzing before the sun had fully risen. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras flashing as protesters gathered outside, holding signs that read, "Justice for All," and "End Racial Profiling Now." Judge Nathaniel Carter walked through the side entrance, his black robe folded over his arm, his expression calm but unreadable. The courtroom was packed to capacity, everyone waiting to see what he would do. At the defense table, Officers Daniel Harper and Michael Vaughn sat side by side. Harper sat stiff, jaw tight, refusing to look at Nathaniel. Vaughn looked pale, restless, his hands clasped together, his gaze flicking nervously between the papers and the floor. Beside them, Union Attorney Richard Baxter leaned back confidently, his silver tie glinting, and his smirk making it clear he intended to fight this hearing like a battlefield. Across from them sat Malik Thompson, the young nursing assistant whose complaint had triggered this hearing, his posture tense, fingers twisting around a notepad. Nathaniel took his seat on the bench. "Court is now in session," he said, his voice even but firm. Baxter stood immediately. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we request that you recuse yourself given your incident with my clients last night. There's an obvious conflict of interest here." Nathaniel raised a hand for silence. "Mr. Baxter, I have reviewed the judicial ethics guidelines thoroughly. There is no legal requirement for me to recuse myself. The events of last night are unrelated to the matter before this court, and my ability to remain impartial is not in question." Baxter smirked. "Unrelated? Your Honor, these are the same officers who detained you less than 24 hours ago. You were humiliated in public by my clients." Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Baxter, I am not here to rule based on my feelings. I am here to rule based on the facts, the law, and the evidence presented. That is my duty, and I intend to fulfill it." Testimony. Malik Thompson took the stand, raising his right hand and taking the oath. He described leaving work at the hospital, stopping at a convenience store, and being confronted by Harper and Vaughn. "They told me I matched a suspect's description," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I kept telling them I was just getting off work, that I had my ID and badge with me, but Officer Harper didn't want to hear it. He shoved me against my car hard enough to bruise my ribs, and when I protested, he tightened the cuffs so badly I lost feeling in my hands." The body camera footage played, showing Harper pushing Malik against the car while Vaughn hesitated in the background, muttering, "We should. Check his ID." Only for Harper to snap back, "Don't waste time. Cuff him." Gasps rippled through the gallery as the footage ended. Officer Jamal Robinson took the stand, his voice steady but carrying the weight of someone risking everything. "I became a cop to serve, to build trust. But what I've seen over the last 3 years is troubling," he began. "We've been trained unofficially to profile, not written in any manual, but taught through ride-alongs, briefings, conversations. We're told which neighborhoods to patrol, who to stop, and even what language to use to justify it. It's not about safety, sir. It's about numbers." The truth comes out. The following morning, the courtroom was packed beyond capacity. When Vaughn took the stand, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "Your Honor, what happened that night wasn't just about Mr. Thompson. It's bigger than that," Vaughn began, his voice low but audible. "Go on," Nathaniel said calmly. Vaughn took a deep breath. "We were told unofficially to increase stops in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. They called them proactive sweeps, but everyone knew what it meant. Meet your numbers, or you'd pay for it on your evaluations." Baxter objected, but Nathaniel overruled him. "The witness will continue." "There's pressure from the top," Vaughn said, his voice growing steadier. "Quota stops, arrest numbers. We were told to focus on specific areas, places where people wouldn't fight back, where complaints wouldn't stick. If you brought in numbers, You got better shifts, better assignments. The room erupted as Vaughn continued. I didn't sign up for this. I became a cop to serve, to protect people, not to harass them for statistics. He looked down at his hands before adding, and the night of Judge Carter's arrest, I told Harper we should check his ID, but he told me to shut up. Said we didn't have time to waste. He wanted the arrest, Your Honor. He wanted the numbers. Harper slammed his palm against the table, shooting to his feet. That's a lie, he shouted. Nathaniel's gavel cracked down twice. Order! Harper glared at Vaughn. You're just trying to save yourself. You're weak, Vaughn. Vaughn turned to look at him directly. Maybe, but at least I'm telling the truth. Robinson's testimony reinforced everything. This isn't one incident. This is the culture. I've watched officers push boundaries because they know complaints won't stick. I've seen records lost when someone high up wanted cases buried. The ruling. Judge Nathaniel Carter returned to the bench for his ruling, the weight of everything pressing heavily on his shoulders. Outside, hundreds of protesters filled the air with chants demanding justice and accountability. This court has considered the testimony, the evidence, and the gravity of the circumstances, he began. This is not merely a matter of excessive force. This is a matter of trust. Trust between the people and the institutions sworn to serve them. He paused, letting his words settle. Officers Daniel Harper and Michael Vaughn, this court finds that your actions violated both departmental policy and constitutional protections. You are hereby suspended without pay for 6 months, effective immediately. Harper's face flushed red, but Nathaniel raised a hand, continuing. Furthermore, this ruling goes beyond individual accountability. It demands systemic reform. The room exploded with sound as he announced sweeping changes, mandatory body cameras with footage reviewed by an independent civilian oversight board, creation of a community accountability council, and comprehensive review of all arrests where racial profiling had been claimed. This ruling is not about vengeance, he said. It is about restoration, restoring trust, restoring dignity, and restoring balance between authority and the community it serves. He drew a deep breath. When I was arrested, I was treated not as a judge, not even as a man, but as a suspect who fit someone's description. That humiliation was real. But this case is not about me. It's about every person who has ever been profiled, silenced, or dismissed without being heard. Looking toward Malik Thompson, he added, Mr. Thompson, this court recognizes your courage in coming forward. Know that your voice has helped shape change. Nathaniel straightened, his voice deepening. Justice is not a moment. It is a process. And today, that process has begun. He lifted his gavel high, then brought it down with a sharp, resounding crack that echoed through the courtroom like thunder. 6 months later. The city of Atlanta felt different, as if a quiet current of change was running beneath its streets, reshaping old systems and rebuilding broken trust. Outside the courthouse, community leaders, officers, activists, and residents stood together, exchanging ideas instead of accusations. Judge Nathaniel Carter stood at the center, his black robe replaced by a simple gray suit, seeing something he hadn't seen in years, hope mixed with determination. The reforms had rolled out one after another. Every patrol officer now wore body cameras, footage automatically uploaded and reviewed by the Civilian Oversight Board. The Community Accountability Council had overturned dozens of wrongful citations and launched investigations into buried misconduct. Monthly forums brought officers and citizens together in dialogue. The statistics told their own story. Discretionary stops had dropped by 45%, citizen complaints had fallen sharply, and surveys showed trust in law enforcement rising for the first time in nearly a decade. Officer Jamal Robinson had been promoted to lead community relations, his courage during the hearing turning him into a symbol of integrity. Michael Vaughn had completed his suspension and training, now working in a pilot program to rebuild trust in affected communities. Daniel Harper had returned to duty, but found himself under constant review. At first, he resisted every reform, but over time, resistance gave way to reflection. He'd even approached Malik Thompson quietly after a community session, offering a handshake without words. Malik had taken it hesitantly, but it was a start. Malik himself had enrolled in criminal justice courses, determined to become an advocate for fair policing. "If they're going to change the rules," he told Nathaniel, "I want to make sure I'm there to hold them to it." At a community forum, Nathaniel listened as people spoke their truths without fear. A single mother described feeling safe driving her children to school for the first time in years. A retired officer admitted publicly that he regretted participating in profiling practices. Local teens spoke about how trust wasn't rebuilt through policies alone, but through relationships, respect, and empathy. When Robinson spotted Nathaniel after the forum, he smiled broadly. "You see this, Judge? This is what change looks like." Nathaniel nodded, watching neighbors and officers shake hands, exchange phone numbers, make plans. "It's a start," he said quietly, "but it has to last beyond today." As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the windows, Nathaniel stepped outside and paused, taking in the sounds of laughter, conversation, and quiet hope. He thought about where he had been 6 months ago, shoved against his car, handcuffed in front of strangers, stripped of dignity by men who saw only a profile, not a person. Standing here, he felt the weight of that night not as pain, but as purpose. Change wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy, but it was real, built on courage, sacrifice, and a collective refusal to stay silent. Nathaniel glanced at the quick trip down the street where it had all started, watching as a patrol car pulled in slowly. 2 officers stepped out, greeting a group of teenagers by name, shaking hands, smiling. No shouts, no suspicion, no raised voices, just recognition, respect, and humanity. Nathaniel smiled faintly, turning back toward the courthouse, the city skyline glowing under the evening sun. For the first time in a long time, he believed something he had always told others, but had struggled to feel himself. Justice was possible. As he walked forward, his steps steady and sure, he carried with him the reminder of that night, the promise born from pain, and the unshakable belief that change, when demanded and defended, can ripple far beyond a single courtroom, transforming not just policies but people, not just systems, but souls.